All right, guys. So we have a guest tonight, Rakeem, and he is going to be talking on a few things. So obviously in the academy, we really focus in on mindset behind money and the behavioral aspects that kind of follow with, money. You hear the word money, what triggers in your head, what drives our ultimate decision making. Obviously, from a technical perspective, man, we could talk about that all day long, but what do we need first to get you past that initial stage to believe that you can win with money? Because everybody here has all the ability in the world to win with money, and we know that. But what's that belief system that we have to work on first to get there? And working with financial trauma, empathy, and knowing how you grew up with money, and all those things that those aspects of life that dictate that answer ultimately is what Rakeem's going to talk about tonight. So I'm super excited to introduce him to everybody and let him run with it. Welcome, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. What's going on, guys? Rakim Sabri here. I talk a lot about financial trauma and financial empowerment. Usually my content is geared towards people who look like me, right? I market that way. But the topic of financial trauma really can apply to anybody and everybody. So general housekeeping stuff for me, I'm an introvert. I'm not shy about letting people know that. So I thrive off of your engagement. When I ask a question or you have a comment based off something that I said, or if something that I said resonates with you, definitely let me know in the chat. I have the chat box opened right here, so I'm going to be monitoring that as I'm talking. But I'll just jump right into it, give you guys some background on who I am, talk about financial trauma, how I ended up in this niche, and then I have a few line items that I thought would be interesting to this group. So I'll get into that as well. My background, I have a banking background. I worked in banking for a decade from November of 2011 through May of 21. In May of 21, I quit my job with the Great Resignation, fired my boss, and I've been on this entrepreneurial journey ever since. So coming up on a 2-year anniversary. While working in banking, that's where I got my crash course into understanding personal finance, because I had to sell financial products and services to our customers. And I worked in what was referred to as mass affluent markets. So basically that meant that there was a level of service provided to individuals who had certain assets with the bank. And so based off of that level of service, they expected a level of competence, a level of understanding, and being able to discuss their financial matters, product services. Ultimately, we were trying to win their business from competitors. And of course, I had to learn these things in order to have these conversations. Since I've left banking, I have gained a couple of certifications. I used to be anti-cert because my content was mostly experience-based. But since then, I've become a certified financial education instructor, a registered financial consultant, and right now I'm pursuing the AFC, Accredited Financial Counselor designation. So I'm a candidate for that. Really, all of that means is that I can teach financial literacy. I have experience in the field, and now working on the Accredited Financial Counselor, that I can understand the therapeutic clinical approaches, excuse me, to helping people address their goals and their mindsets around money. A lot of this stuff I was already involved with intuitively through my own journey with money, but having the backing of these credentials and these organizations certainly makes me more credible in the eyes of a lot of people and gives me the language to talk about these topics from a more research-based empirical approach. Getting into financial trauma, I want to ask the group really quickly, how have you guys experienced financial trauma? The question is, have you guys experienced financial trauma? If you have experienced financial trauma, put a 1 in the chat. If you have not experienced financial trauma, put a 2 in the chat. If you're like, I don't know what financial trauma is, put a 3 in the chat. So I see a lot of 1s. So as those answers are coming in, that was a trick question because everybody's experienced financial trauma. And so I'm going to give you guys a working definition. This is a new niche, right, in personal finance. A lot of people are talking about it right now, but there's not really one set industry definition. And I love that, because as I get more into the topic of financial trauma, It allows for me to kind of play around with the combination of life experience and education that I have in defining it. So my working definition, financial trauma, is any instance observed or experienced that has a negative impact on the way that you view, interact with, or believe about money. Now, knowing that most of our money beliefs are kind of firmly cemented around the age of 7, and I'm sure everybody here is older than 7, a lot of those financial traumas come from what it is that we observed or heard our parents say and or do, or family members, when it comes to navigating finances. And maybe we don't recognize those isolated incidents or the combination of those isolated incidences as having an impact on the way that we view, interact with, or believe about money. But they certainly do, right? If there was ever a time where you had to go to the Scholastic Book Fair and you could not buy this cool pencil case that all your friends could because you didn't have the money to do that, well, that could be a financial trauma, right? That can lead into feelings of lower self-worth, I'm not good enough, they have, but I don't, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's a lot of examples that if we kind of look back and pull back the layers, as far as how we felt based off of certain financial occurrences or that tied into certain instances. I'll give more examples. I was a musician growing up, right? I taught myself how to play piano and I played clarinet. My parents could not afford to send me to tutoring for the instruments. In fact, the school had to lend me an instrument because I was like the only kid who didn't have the money to rent an instrument or buy an instrument to bring home to practice. And because the band teacher at that particular point in time recognized that I had talent, they're like, listen, take this home, bring it back, like, do what you got to do. We want you to do this. But there's a financial trauma there too, right? I'm the only person on the band who has a rented instrument somebody else used. They had to clean it for me. Like, you have feelings of low self-esteem or low self-worth tied into those financial instances that many times can overshadow, right, the passion that you have in whatever that thing is, whether it be athletics, whether it be music, whether it be any kind of extracurricular activity. So when we think about how those instances shape the person that we become later in life, right, why we decided to work, when we started working, right? How many people, put a 1 in the chat if you were told to get a job at 14, 15, or 16?
It's okay. I don't wait for baby.
I got my first job when I was 15 or 16 years old. I had to go apply for working papers. I don't even know if that's still a thing anymore, but I went out and got a job, not necessarily because I needed money, but because that was a thing to do, right? My mom was like, go out, get a job. And when I was told to go out and get a job, what was the thing that I was taught, or what was the thing that you were taught when it came to the money that you made? Probably you should be saving, right? Save your money, save your money, save your money, or save a portion of your money. But a lot of times, and I just saw a tweet before I jumped on from somebody that I follow who said, our parents showed us the basics, but didn't teach us the fundamentals. I was like, whew, that's a bar. Because in being taught to save our money, we weren't necessarily taught why we should be saving, what we should be saving for. And so there was this, especially in the environment that I grew up with, where I experienced poverty, there was this aspect of scarcity that really drove, okay, I have this money, I'm saving this money for just because, and then the new PlayStation comes out, or I want to go on vacation, or I want to buy clothes, or I need to buy clothes, or I need to support my family in some way. And so because I need to do these things, I'm saving this up to then go all the way to 100, to go back down to 0, to repeat this cycle. And so when I think about, if I knew then what I know now, right, we have those conversations all the time, maybe I would have saved a little piece, maybe a tiny piece of what it is that I had, and just kept saving. If I would have started saving money from the time I was 16, like, who knows where I would be now, right? And so how we define emergencies are influenced by the beliefs that we have when we are shaping those ideas, right? Is an emergency a situation where, oh, I don't have enough money to wash my clothes? so I have to wash my clothes in the bathroom sink, right? Well, is that an emergency or is that like survival? Well, okay, my parents don't have money to buy dinner tonight, so I'm gonna buy dinner for our family. Is that an emergency or is that survival? And so when we look at how those emergencies play out in adulthood, and what is that familiar reaction that we have to those emergencies, we revert almost in a way into our childhood selves and like, okay, this is how I felt in that moment. This is what I did. And so there's a whole host of ways that people cope with that, cope with the feelings that they have related to money, the anxiety, the fear, the guilt, the shame. And a lot of times we see that compounded by the way that we're marketed to every day, right? So there's a culture of consumerism that we all kind of participate in. And within that culture of consumerism, when we're opening our phones and we're looking at Facebook or Instagram, now Twitter, LinkedIn, anything, there's all these ads telling us, well, this will make your life easier, or this is what you need to demonstrate status, or this. And Amazon changed the game by giving us instant gratification, right? We don't have to wait 7 to 14 days to get what it is that we're looking to buy. We could get it in the next 2 days. And so what does that do in terms of satisfying that need to buy, so that we can be better? And right, I'm using better in air quotes because do we really need that item? And so again, going back to this idea, and I know I'm talking fast, so I'm going to slow down in a second, but going back to that idea of how we define emergencies and what's happening on a psychological level for us in response to how we perceive that emergency is super crucial. Just checking the comments here. See a lot of people were told to save. A lot of people started working early. I was about to buy a Stairmaster on Amazon. So funny story about that, when COVID hit and I was afraid to go to the gym, I went and I bought a barbell. I bought these plates for, to lift the weights with, right? And I'm like, I'm gonna work out in my garage. I have a garage. And I probably went down and used that barbell maybe once or twice. COVID calmed down. I went back to the gym. And so again, like that idea of scarcity, that idea of fear, and I won't get into the whole fear marketing that took place with COVID, but there's the pressure to do something in order to survive. There's the pressure to do something in order to navigate around what is this risk that we're being presented with. And so it's super important to monitor what are our inputs and what are our outputs. And I use that language very specifically because the same language could be applied to the way that we actually manage money, right? When we talk about budgeting, we're looking at what is our input versus what are our output. How much money are we bringing in versus how much money are we spending? But when we look at what are the stimulus that we're receiving as far as inputs, right? What are we watching? What are we consuming? What are we listening to? Who are we listening to? Who are we surrounded with? What are the pressures that exist for us to do certain things or spend our money in a certain way versus what are we getting out of that? And I'm not picking on you, but the example of the Stairmaster, like when we think about, well, what is the output that we're looking for in that particular situation? And you can share, you don't have to share. I just thought that was a super relevant example. I would say if I was going to buy a Stairmaster off of Amazon, that it would be like, I want to get my physique right. It's the summertime. I want to have abs. Like I'm going to be doing cardio all the time. And so you're buying into this image that you've created in your mind about what your desired outcome is when this product serves that need for you. Because the same thing that you could do with the Stairmaster, you could do outside. You could walk around the block. There's different things. I hear you chiming in. Go ahead.
That's exactly what I concluded. It was so funny that you picked up on that example because the double whammy was the fact that I saw a Facebook ad and then I saw like how many people bought and I'm just like, man, I'm just making this person richer. Like they could have just created this 30-second clip just to sell this item and it's not even a part of their like daily lifestyle. So I had to take a second and, use Brendan's rule, like think about it. And if you still want it, like, I don't know what his rule is. I think it was like an arbitrary number of days later, then get it. But if not, leave it where it is.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I don't know his rule either. So we're we're both in the same boat. But I've heard that as a strategy to to determine whether or not you need something or whether or not you're going to buy something, whether or not it's necessarily important. Do you want this thing, or is society telling you that you need this thing? And I think that that's also important, right? As we're talking about monitoring our inputs and our outputs, a lot of times the feelings, the thoughts, the beliefs that we think that we have are not really our feelings, our thoughts, and our beliefs. They're the feelings, thoughts, and beliefs that we're being told that we should have. And so if you spend all day on social media, which is hard not to do, right? As you're engaging with your community, your friends, your family, whoever, you see a lot of stuff. I have to check myself often when I'm sitting here and I'm like, do I agree with this or do I disagree with this? And do I agree or disagree with this, whatever this is, based off of the people who are advocating for this, or based off of what my personal feelings are on this topic? Because there are a lot of people that I'm connected with who are influential in the world of personal finance, right? In the personal finance community, who are influential in the world of media. So I write a lot. So I've written for a lot of different publications, editors, other writers. And so you have people of influence in their specific lane talking about a topic, and maybe there's a hot take. And right now the popular thing is gender wars, which I can't stand. But right, there's like, oh, the man's supposed to do this. Oh, the woman's supposed to do this. Oh, men don't like women. Oh, women don't like men. There's this super clash. And so there's these like takes that are thrown out there where people feel inclined to engage with, but more than feeling inclined to engage with, they feel inclined to attach themselves to. And to your point, not only is it because it's present that you feel inclined to engage or attach yourself to it, but it's based off of the quote unquote social proof that you feel inclined to engage with, right? If this post has 5,000 retweets and 2,800 likes, right? That's going to be a lot more of a credible post in your mind if it had 0 likes and maybe 2 retweets. You might feel more attached to or engage or more inclined to engage with this particular post because it has so much engagement than you would if it didn't. And so based off of the engagement, it may sway you in one way or another. And this can be applied to finance, this could be applied to life, this could be applied to psychology as a whole. And so since I'm bringing up psychology, I shared a tweet not too long ago where I said, you can't separate finances from psychology, because I believe there's a statistic out there that says 80% of our decision-making financially comes from our emotions. And so when we look at finance, and we're often taught about finance through a traditional lens that says 1 + 1 = 2, and this is the answer, this is the formula. When we don't acknowledge the role of culture, we don't acknowledge the role of trauma, we don't acknowledge the role of where we are in our cycle, right? Whether that be the marketing cycle, whether that be our emotional cycle, whether that be the seasonal cycle, like we're not taking into account the assault on our minds that are taking place that influence these decisions or indecision. I think a great example in the current events are the Silicon Valley Bank situation, right? There were a lot of people who were panicking because they did not know, what does this mean? What's a bank run? Oh, I'm hearing people pulling their money out of the bank. I'm going to go pull my money out of the bank. Is my money safe? And so I take for granted that I spent so much time in the banking world and so much time in the industry understanding what are the insurance allowances under FDIC based off of the account ownership type and custodial type. But a lot of people don't know that. And so when we look at the big goals that are promoted on social media around how much money we should have in our bank account, how much money we should have in our investment accounts, what does freedom look like as far as retirement? What does status look like in terms of income? There are a lot of people who want to be millionaires, but don't know why they want to be millionaires. And there are a lot of people that want to have $1 million in their bank account, but don't recognize that having $1 million in one bank account only insures you up to the 250,000, right? And so what happens to the rest of the money in the event that a bank that you're banking at fails? And that all banks are not created the same. And that you look at a Bank of America, you look at some online bank like Ally, right? Well, what happens if Ally fails? And so all of these things are different variables that when we get to the root of it, it's like, well, do you really want to be a millionaire, or do you want what being a millionaire affords you in terms of time, in terms of experiences, in terms of freedom, in terms of ease and convenience, right? And is that all true, right? Do all of those things necessarily come with becoming a millionaire? Or are the issues that you're experiencing today compounded by the fact that you're a millionaire? Taking a breath for a second, because I know I've been running. So financial empathy is a newer concept as well. And usually when I talk about financial empathy, I'm talking to financial facing organizations, right? So that's credit unions, banks, maybe insurance companies, around how to engage with their target audience, people who use their products. And a lot of those organizations want to engage more the everyday person, or at least they say that they do, right? I know that Bank of America and some other banks that I've worked for we're very clear that we're targeting the people that have money or the people that we know are going to have money. But the people that don't have money, and a lot of times those are historically disenfranchised people, right? Black, Latino, other people of color. Those people, how do we engage them to trust banks, to trust these institutions, to put the money here, to engage in relationships in the way that they're getting direct deposits, in the way that they're using the online banking, in the way that they're investing with us, they're consuming more of our products, credit cards, et cetera, et cetera. And my answer to that question is financial empathy. So there's this idea, for whatever reason, that people need financial literacy as the golden solution, right, to solving all their problems, particularly people who are experiencing poverty or people who have been historically disenfranchised. And whereas I do believe that financial literacy is important, and we can define financial literacy in a second, I think that financial literacy falls short in that there are a lot of people who are in those circumstances who are very financially literate, but their mindset and their beliefs and the traumas that they've experienced prevent them from executing on the things that they know they should be doing. So I'm gonna let that breathe for a second. There are a lot of financially literate people who are poor, right? There are a lot of financially literate people who are experiencing poverty. They know that they should do this thing, but they're operating out of survival. And so when I talk about financial empathy with these organizations, I'm talking about putting yourself in the position of these people and understanding that not only do they need financial education, but they need to be met where they are. They don't need to be talked at. They don't need to be condemned. They don't need to be made to feel guilty or shame about their circumstances. They need to be met where they are and then supported along the way. But you guys are not financially facing organizations. You guys are individuals. And so when I was thinking about this topic for tonight, I thought about financial empathy needs to also be demonstrated and executed inwardly, right? And so a lot of times as we set these goals and we embark on these financial journeys, we beat ourselves up. We experience shame, we experience guilt, we experience fear, because maybe we're not where the next person is. Or maybe we have a mishap, right? We're doing so good and then something happens that pulls us back. So I'm gonna go back to the example of the Stairmaster. Like I said, I promise you I'm not picking on you, but I just thought that that was so relevant. In sharing that, first of all, congratulations to you, right? Because you liberated yourself from the desire of doing that thing that maybe wasn't the best thing for you. But let's say that you went down that path and you actually ended up doing it. Maybe you didn't have a budget allocated for that particular thing. Maybe it was an impulse buy. And I know Stairmasters are not cheap, right? So now you're in a situation where you're like, damn, did I really need the Stairmaster? And I just spent the money on it. And maybe I'm not using it as much as I want to, or as much as I intended to. Maybe the goal that I had established as far as my physique or my cardio or my healthy living is not something that I'm experiencing. Well, now I'm experiencing guilt and shame because I did this thing, I deviated from my path, and I didn't even accomplish what it is that I set out to do, right? And so in that way, you're beating yourself up. And a lot of times people will do that. They'll beat themselves up, they'll experience shame, they'll withdraw. and they'll say, oh, well, you know, I'm not good enough. Oh, well, I can't. I see the comment. Completely derailed me. But yeah, people beat themselves up. They experience guilt, they experience fear, they experience shame. Maybe they don't want to talk about it. Maybe they don't want to share with people that are important to them, their community, their partner. And so then that creates a whole line of other issues, right? That can create something like something that's referred to as financial infidelity, right? Where if you're in a partnership, you're doing things that can ultimately impact the finances of the both of you, but you're keeping it a secret because you guys are not communicating, you're not on board. And so that financial infidelity might be overspending, it might be not budgeting, it might be hiding purchases or hiding money, right? Saying, oh, well, I have a completely separate bank account, and so I'm not going to tell them about this bank account. I'm not going to tell them what's in this bank account. And I think that, you know, there's a thin line there as we talk about that empathy, because you are entitled to your own money, right? You can have the separate bank account if you want to, but it's what is the intention driving having that separate bank account? What is the intention driving borrowing your partner's access to seeing that? And so that's another issue, financial infidelity. And I didn't come on here to talk about that, but it does fall under these the approaches to financial therapy and what people are working on. So I know I'm giving you guys a lot, and I'm trying to be mindful of the time, but you know, drop a 1 in the chat if you are as on fire on this topic as I am. Yeah, I appreciate you guys. And so moving from financial empathy, actually, before I move from financial empathy, I want to ask you, do you want to do you have a good grasp or understanding of financial empathy? Is it okay for me to move on, or should I spend a little bit more time here? If it's okay for me to move on, you could just shout out a year or drop a 1 in the chat. If you want me to spend a little bit more time, and you have any specific questions, definitely feel free to ask those questions. We're good to go? All right, so moving from financial empathy and, you know, being kind to yourself in the way that you set these goals, you go after accomplishing these goals. I think it's super important, and I don't know if this is a term that anybody else uses, but I use this term. There's this idea of financial perfection, right? People are chasing financial perfection. They want to max out their investments. They want to save. They want to have the perfect credit score. They want to, do all of the things, right? Check off all the boxes on the list. And financial perfection is impossible, right? There is no financial perfection. It's an illusion. There's no book yet for all these terms that I'm using, because these are terms that I came up with. Well, so a lot of the financial perfection is a term I came up with on a podcast that I was interviewed for, but financial infidelity is definitely a term that has been used. Financial empathy is definitely a term that has been used, but these are all new concepts. So there's not a lot out there speaking to these specific terminologies. There's some stuff out there, but there's a lot of people doing a lot of work to make this content more mainstream. But going back into this idea of financial perfection, I think it's super important for us to accept and embrace that this idea of financial perfection is an illusion. It's not real. Financial perfection, if it is possible, exists in a moment in time, right? A moment in time. It's not something that you can maintain or sustain over a long period of time. Why? Because things are constantly changing, things that are within your control and things that are outside of your control. So you might have a 150 credit score one day, and then your credit score might fluctuate based off of a purchase, based off of paying something off, based off of using your credit card, right? And that's okay. Same thing with your budget, same thing with your emergency fund. There was so much conversation when the pandemic hit and shortly after around people having to tap into their emergency funds and feeling guilty or feeling shame. And I'm going to raise my hand as being one of these people, right? Because they had to use their emergency fund that they funded for the emergency that they were experiencing, right? You're supposed to use your emergency fund. And so understanding that financial perfection is a moment in time means that yes, you can strive for these goals and you should strive for these goals. You should strive to have, your ducks in a row and check off all the boxes, right? But doesn't mean that they will always be that way. And that's okay. And so instead of striving for financial perfection, what you should be doing is striving for financial resilience, right? So that's another term, right? Financial resilience is more manageable, more reasonable. Financial resilience is how you address these curveball situations that influence what's happening on any given day with any aspect of your financial well-being, whether that is the specifics of what's in your bank account or what your credit score looks like, or what, credit utilization looks like, or whatever. All of those things are influenced by external factors that you can't control or internal factors that you can't control. And so how do you address those issues when they come up? And so when I think about resilience, I think about our ability to, I'll use the gym as an example. I started getting up early and going to the gym recently. And as I'm working out, and I do an hour of lifting and then I do 30 minutes of cardio afterwards. When I first started doing this, I'm on the treadmill and I'm like dying, right? And I'm at 10 minutes and I'm like, oh my God, I don't know how I'm gonna make it to 15 minutes. I don't know how to make it to 20 minutes. I don't know how to make it to 30 minutes. And then I was on the treadmill today doing the same exact exercise. And I'm like basically singing and dancing while I'm on this treadmill. I'm like, oh, while I'm on my phone, like this is easy. I need to turn it up. And so the resilience for me is showing up every day, doing this work despite being tired, despite feeling like I can't do it, despite being out of breath, having a conversation in my head that says, nope, we set a goal. I could go home whenever I want to. I could get off this treadmill whenever I want to, but I'm going to do these exercises. I'm going to lift, I'm going to come home, and then I'm going to lift, I'm going to do the cardio, and then I'm going to go home. And I'm going to do the cardio. I'm going to do the full cardio. No 15, no 25. I'm doing it 30 minutes. And then I'm going to go home. And eventually over time, as I did this thing more and more frequently, I was able to, not that the work got easier, I was able to get stronger. And so when we look at that through the lens of our personal finances, we have to learn how to weather these different situations that occur. And eventually, we will get stronger and we'll be able to meet these issues head on. And so again, I want to share, don't strive for financial perfection, strive for financial resilience. When something happens, when the curveball comes and, you don't know what to do, or you need to use your emergency fund, or you can't, put a payment towards eliminating debt this month, or you can't put your money towards an investment this month, like understand, okay, I got knocked off the horse. This is what my long-term goal is. Now I'm going to go back and I'm going to reset, recover, and keep doing it. Because a lot of times what happens is people get hit with this curveball and then they just abandon the whole thing. And so the reason why I'm in a situation, I'll pick on myself this time. The reason why I was in a situation where I couldn't do the cardio for the 30 minutes is because I stopped doing the cardio, right? I stopped working out for a period of time. I got off the horse and I was just like, all right, well, I'm not going to work out now. So I had to get back into the process, get back into the practice and the routine of working out and build up those muscles again, build up that endurance again, build up that resilience again. And so that's why I'm in my head, like, I know that I'm better than this, right? I know that I can do this. I know that this is not killing me. It feels like it's killing me in this moment, but I know this is not killing me. Like, this is just making me stronger. And so as I reflect on what my experience was this morning, right? Getting up at 5 o'clock in the morning to go to the gym, doing my hour of lifting, doing my half an hour of cardio, and basically like breezing through the cardio, just chilling. I'm like, all right, like I'm getting back into the groove. And so I would like you guys to apply that same logic to not only your finances, but your thinking, your approach to finances. All right, so how much time do I have left?
You got a solid 25 minutes if we need it. We don't have to push it there, but that's an hour.
Okay. No, I have things that I've written down that I haven't touched on. So I just want to make sure I'm not talking too much.
That's all you.
So we talked about financial trauma. We talked about financial empathy and now financial therapy, right? So there's this whole new discipline within the world of personal finance that's focused on financial therapy. And this is my interpretation of it. So, take it with a grain of salt. But when I look at it from like top down kind of like funnel of this niche, right? It's financial psychology at the top. So we're looking at how do our beliefs, how do our experiences, how does our mindset influence our behaviors around money? Just general financial psychology at the top. And then you get down into financial therapy. And financial therapy, you're working through issues related to your finances or that may surface as a result of other issues that you had that have an impact on your finances. So if you think about budgeting, you think about opening your bank account app, you think about looking at your credit report or looking at your credit score or making a financial purchase or, what is the time period between the paychecks that you collect? And you have a negative emotional response to those instances, those variables, then a financial therapist can help because that negative emotional response could be anxiety, could be fear, could be guilt, could be avoidance. That's a really popular one, right? Financial avoidance and saying, well, I'm not even going to touch it. I'm not even going to look at it because this is the reaction that I'm going to have. It could be, I don't have a term for this outside of doing the most, right? You're experiencing a financial issue. And so you're like, I'm just going to go and spend money. I have a financial issue, but I'm going to go and spend more money. And so that's doing the most, right? I'm going to go do brunch. I'm going to go buy a new outfit. I'm stressed out. I'm going to buy myself a treat. I deserve it. I'm going to go do Starbucks. And this is not to, shame anybody, right? I want this to be a safe space. And my goal when I create content is to always facilitate and hold safe space for people who might be interacting in this way. But that's because of now I have this background, this focus on financial therapy and financial counseling. I would include in that financial counseling is a part of the therapeutic process. And so there's an organization called the Financial Therapy Association that has been doing a lot of work in the space to establish kind of guidelines and norms as far as the merging of these professional worlds, right? The world of mental health and the world of professional financial planning. And we're seeing industry-wide now, a lot of the focus with planners is moving towards financial psychology, so much so that there's a lot of conversation around how they're compensated, right? How they change their compensation model to include kind of a component of coaching or some kind of subscription-based model where they can provide more services to more people. Because historically, planners were working with people who had money in significant amounts, right? So people who don't have money didn't go to approach a planner because they didn't have the money. So it's like, why am I going to work with a planner? And I know that there's exceptions to the rules there, but ultimately the industry is moving towards understanding the psychology of money, right? With clients of the entire spectrum so that everybody gets the help that they need. And financial counseling, which is where I'm focused right now, where I'm working on this designation, helps to focus on client-centric approaches to goal setting and overcoming the issues that they might have financially in those situations. So a lot of times with financial counseling clients, they're people who are looking to prevent an issue from occurring. They are experiencing an issue and they want to kind of remediate it, or they are just doing maintenance. So they're like, okay, I had an issue. We got over this issue. Now we want to stay in this good place, right? We want to continue to maintain financial resilience. And what I love about the financial counseling world is that it is client centric. Because so I've been a financial coach for a number of years now. My approach to coaching initially was, I'm telling you what to do. I'm leading, right? I'm the professional. I know, I'm educating you. I'm telling you, this is what the goal is. This is how we're going to accomplish the goal. I'm going to crack the whip and make sure that we're staying accountable to what it is that I set up for you. The switch in financial counseling now says, you're telling me what your goals are. I am making sure that not only are the goals that you have aligned to your values, right? So you're telling me that you want to save more, you want to pay down debt. Why do you want to do these things? Because somebody told you that you should, because you actually want to do this. Because if you don't actually want to do this and they're not aligned to your values, then we're going to be spinning our wheels trying to make you do this behavior that you don't really believe in, that you don't really want to do. And you're just going to get frustrated, and my time is going to be wasted, and you're just going to be paying me money to tell you to do things that you know that you should be doing. And so helping people to align their values with their goals, I think, is super important. As I'm having this conversation with you guys, making sure that your values are aligned with your goals is super important. And your values are going to be influenced by a host of different variables, right? That could be culture, that could be scarcity, right? It's like, so if it's important to you to have money because you didn't have money before, well, maybe your goals are going to be influenced by, well, I need to save, I need to have this money on hand, so I'm not going to invest it. I have an aversion to investing because it's too risky. As we see over the last couple of years within these different markets, the variability, right? I don't know what just happened. The variability that, sorry guys, I don't know what just happened. I lost some power here. I'm gonna drop off the camera. You can hear me, so yeah, I'll just drop off the camera. Oh, actually, can you see me? Okay.
We can kind of see you as well.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, so I'll just keep going. The variability that exists with the way that the market fluctuations have occurred have discouraged a lot of people from investing in crypto, investing in the stock market, putting their money in banks. And so with those things, you know, again, going back to this idea of financial resilience, going back to this idea of values, going back to this idea of goals, like these things are important. Somebody said, put my phone light on me. Guys are funny. But I do need my light to see my notes. And so I'll end with something practical, right, for you guys to walk away with. And I'm sure that this is not anything new to you, but when I think about, okay, if somebody is experiencing financial trauma, what is the thing that they can do to overcome that trauma, to start to overcome that trauma? I think the important thing is to focus on mindfulness, right? Bring yourself into the moment, right? Bring yourself into, well, how am I feeling right now? What is happening right now? Am I in danger? That's a super important question. Am I in danger? Do I still have a roof over my head? Do I still have food in my refrigerator? Can I get access to food? Can I get access to the basic necessities? Okay, cool. Now I have this issue that I need to address. How can I put myself in a position to think about this issue rationally? And so the mindfulness activities, and there are a bunch of them, but the mindfulness activities that I tend to focus on is involved with like meditation, right? So what am I feeling right now? Like, what do I literally feel? The temperature, pressure, like how I'm sitting, is there pressure in the back of my neck? Is there pressure in my legs? What am I tasting right now? What am I smelling right now? What am I hearing right now? Like, you go through each one of your senses and you focus on what is the sensation that you're experiencing right now. You bring yourself into this current moment where everything is okay, because everything is okay. Everything will be okay. You're not in a situation where you're in danger. And I think that that's super important, because our brain cannot distinguish between real and imagined danger, right? And so the fight or flight response that and there's in addition to fight or flight, but the fight or flight response that's baked into us, that is like hardwired into us, is going to surface whether there's a tiger standing in front of us, or we're perceiving this threat, like a debt collector is calling us, or we're on social media and we see like somebody, the banks are shutting down, they're doing bank runs. And so it's super important for us to bring ourselves current, to recognize that we're safe, and then to game plan. And again, that goal setting has to be aligned to what your values are. I think I'm going to end it there. I covered most of, if not all of my material. I don't know what's going on with my power in here. I'm gonna have to check after I get off this call, but I want to kind of open it up for questions, comments, feedback, anything that you guys have for me in the maybe 15 minutes or so that we have left together.
I have a question, Rakeem. So back in like 08, my dad like lost his job, and my mom was a stay-at-home at the time, so she didn't make income, 4 boys and all that kind of stuff. So one thing I feel like I struggle with is like scarcity sometimes. And I think a lot of that stems from that event, is like we lost our house, we lost our car, all that kind of stuff, whatever. And I think that like that feeling is like, it's almost deeply ingrained in me.
There we go.
I'm
Yep.
kind of curious, like, what's a practical approach? Like, if I feel like I'm not doing enough, I all of a sudden I feel that like that same feeling of like scarcity is the best way to explain it. What's a practical approach to like address that head on and realize what it is, and then go right around that?
First off, I think that's super dope that you shared that with your audience, right? Because people can look at you and your success, and I mean, we've been connected for a while now, and think, how could you battle with scarcity, right? Like how could that be a thing for you? And so sharing that, I think, humanizes the experience of what we all go through, and understanding that no amount of money is going to change like those beliefs, those behaviors, right? It's something that you have to work on internally. As far as how do you address those things, I think coming to terms with what happened, like going back to that time, and this can be traumatic work for a lot of people, but going back to that time period and really kind of taking inventory of the things that you saw, the things that you felt, the things that you heard and observed, and how those ultimately had an impact on how you believe about money, right? How you interact with money is important, especially looking at it from a place of, or once you get to a place of going back to this idea of mindfulness, of recognizing like, I'm good, right? Like I'm okay. This is what I have. This is what I don't have. Like maybe there's an issue that, you need, like there's always going to be an issue. But in terms of like scarcity, like when I think of the word scarcity, I think of limitations, right? Like there's a limited supply. There is, I need to have this so that if this happens, like a lot of times people who are hoarders, right? And there's financial hoarding that exists too, right? I talk about that, where people is like, well, I just need to save and accumulate and save and accumulate and save and accumulate, because just in case I want to have. And so in those particular situations, again, I would say going back to those early memories, focusing on what it is that you experience, why is that you have those beliefs, right? Like what was the experience there? And you talked about losing the house, your mom staying at home. I think you said your dad lost his job. Like all of those things are not your reality today. And so focusing on what have you accomplished? What have you built for yourself? What does abundance look like for you in your mind? I think you have to work on, I'm not saying this to you specifically, but I'm saying in general for anybody that's listening, you have to work on constructing what your idea of abundance looks like, and then accepting that into your life, right? Like fully accepting and believing that into your life. I'll tell you a quick story before I ask if you need clarification on what I shared. I share with you guys, I left my job in May of 2021. I've been on this entrepreneurial journey for the last almost 2 years now. It's not been easy. I have to say, I'm a single man. I own a house. I have a dog, and I still have to pay the mortgage every month. And with entrepreneurship, there's like these fluctuations of what income looks like. And so there's some months where I didn't make any money, and there's some months where I made pretty good money. But for me, the biggest exercise has been figuring out, like, how do I consistently go out, hunt, eat what I kill? And in the times that I'm not going out hunting and eating what I kill, like, how do I bridge the gap between what income looks like? And what I've learned over the last 2 years is that it's very cyclical for me. Like, I might have like a hot streak where I'm working with these different organizations, or I get clients and I'm making this money. And now I have to work on stuff that I missed previously, and I have to plan for what the future looks like. And so in between all of that, like, my financial picture as a whole had done all of the up and down fluctuations, right? Credit, debt, emergency fund, all of that, investments, all of that. And so about maybe a month ago or so, I was contacted by a recruiter who basically wanted to offer me a role as the VP of marketing for a local credit union. And it was like a 6-figure role. And I'm sitting here and I'm like, damn, I really need that money. Like, I really need that money. But in the conversation, my values were not aligned to that money. 2 years ago, that job would have been the perfect job for me. Today, not so much. Because what they told me was, in order for me to take this job, even though I checked off all the boxes for them, was that I needed to stop focusing on the brand that I'm building and focus on building the brand of the organization. And I was like, that's a non-negotiable for me. I didn't leave my job 2 years ago to then be policed in a situation where now I can't continue to build what it is that I've been building, especially where I'm at in terms of traction. And so it was very difficult for me to walk away from that experience, knowing that I just declined a 6-figure job in a very uncertain time period, both for me individually, like personally, in terms of my own personal financial picture, but also in terms of the world at large, right? We're experiencing this recession and inflation and all this craziness. And so I off the phone with the recruiter, I called my dad and I'm like, Dad, I need you to tell me that I'm not crazy, because I just turned down the 6-figure job. And my dad was like, I know that hurt. And I'm like, hell yeah, that hurt. But as we continue to unpack that, like, what I settled on was that my values weren't aligned to that experience. And so I had to choose, and here's a bar for you guys, I had to choose to embrace abundance, even with no money in my bank account. That's not easy to do. And so I share that with you very transparently, with all of you very transparently, because as much as the money matters, it doesn't, right? How unhappy would I have been if I had taken that job? How derailed would I have been if I had taken that job? Would I be able to be here today having this conversation with you with the confidence, the strength, the credibility that I'm having this conversation with you had I taken that job? And, to some people, I'm crazy, right? Like, how could you do that? And, there's a thin line that you're walking between what's practical and what is ideal. But I didn't make that decision for anybody else. I made that decision for me. And so, I come from scarcity. So it's an exercise every single day for me to choose what abundance looks like for me and how to embrace that abundance. And so I don't know if that brings the point home. Does that answer your question?
That hits it right in the head.
Okay. Cool. Thanks for the question. I see a lot going on in the comments, so I'm just getting caught up. Anybody else have any feedback, questions, comments, last words for me before I go and figure out what's happening with my electricity in this room?
Looks like Molly and
I see a comment here. Yeah, a couple of things that have come to mind. One is I need to practice getting comfortable with being uncomfortable, 100%. Other thing related to empathy, it's good to recognize we're working to overcome years of ingrained beliefs and habits. 100%. I think, the way that you phrased that, I didn't phrase it that way, but I think that that's super important. Understanding that just like a weight loss journey, right? I keep making these analogies to fitness, but just like a weight loss journey, right? If we spent years and years and years eating bad food and we gained a bunch of bad weight, and then we start going to the gym for 2 weeks, like, you're not going to just pop back into the vision of what it is that you want. And so, yes, understand that undoing like these years and years and years of bad habits, these years and years of ingrained beliefs, these years and years of just kind of operating on autopilot, like not being intentional about how you move, it's a process that's going to take time. And that's okay. One of the things that I have been focusing on lately in my fitness journey, and my financial journey, and my entrepreneurial journey, like everything is super aligned, and my spiritual journey, is learning to enjoy the process. And I know that sounds super cliche. However, you're going to always get burnt out chasing this goal that feels like it's unattainable, that feels like it's just on the other side, right? So I'll go back to the treadmill example. When I set a goal for 30 minutes and I'm done at 10 minutes, I'm like, okay, I got to get to the 30 minutes. That's the goal. But if I just keep looking at the 30 minutes, like, the time is just going to go by a lot slower for me. Each minute is going to feel like 10 minutes in and of itself. But when I started to focus and I had this conversation in my head, enjoy the journey, Rakim, enjoy the process. Once I start focusing on enjoying the process, enjoying the journey, like paying attention to how I feel in this moment. Okay, I hit the 15-minute mark. Okay, I hit the 20-minute mark. Okay, I hit the 25-minute mark. When I hit the 25-minute mark, I said, Rakim, remember how you feel in this moment. Because you're there, you just have to cross the finish line. And so many people give up at the 20-minute mark or the 25-minute mark. When they're there, they're at their goal, but they just have to cross the finish line. And so when they give up, they get off the treadmill, they had to reset the clock, they got to start the process all over again. And the same thing can apply to any aspect of your life, particularly financial. Let's see. April said, I recently lost a loved one. It's knocked me off balance and everything. And now I feel like I can't go back to my goals. I'm just working to pay my bills. And now my loved one's bill that I inherited. Is this normal? Any suggestions on a way to find back? I think it's important to acknowledge that things change often, right? So we talk about like this idea of financial resilience, like this is the perfect example. And so when you think about what are your goals, and are your goal, first of all, when we look at goals from like, I hate to do this because it does sound super cliche, but it's effective. What are the SMART goals, right? So you might have like this very abstract goal about what that you want to accomplish. And maybe that goal stays the same. But how do we break that goal down now, incorporating the aspects of this life change and this lifestyle change that allows for you to continue to move towards that goal while still managing this change? Because that's what's going to happen. That's always what's going to happen. Excuse me. That's like if you go out, and I live in the state, I live in New England, so we get snow during the winter. That's like if every day I'm going to the gym, driving the car, going to the gym, one day it snows. Well, the snow is an obstacle. The snow can be an obstacle. If it snows bad enough, I'm not going to the gym that day. If it snows okay and I could get on the road and it's safe, then I'm going to drive a little bit slower to get to the gym safely. If there's no snow at all, then I might be cruising, right? So when we look at these different variables that kind of exist, we can't look at them as derailments. We look at them as obstacles, and now we have to incorporate into our process. Maybe we didn't account for those obstacles initially. That's okay. How do we adjust? How do we demonstrate resilience? And so that's tough in the specific scenario that you shared, because now you're dealing with the emotions that come with loss. You're dealing with your own goals being derailed and whatever feelings that may exist there, whether that's shame, guilt, fear, anxiety, being overwhelmed. And now you're dealing with the financial fallout of those situations. And so I would just say, putting it all out in front of you whether you do this like literally on paper or you have a conversation with somebody that can look at that whole plan and say, okay, these are the variables that have changed since I've established this goal. How then do I move forward, taking into account, being sensitive, acknowledging that these things have changed so that I can continue working towards this process? Because the time is going to pass, right? Like the days are going to keep going by. And so how are you going to use that time to move towards those goals? And I think, again, focus on this idea of enjoying the process, right? The journey of taking one step, putting your foot in front of the other each day towards that. You're going to realize so much progress rather, based off of taking that approach over just like, oh, this is, I'm trying to get to the moon. How am I going to get to the moon? Like I have to build the spaceship and then go out there, right? It seems like an impossible feat. And you don't want to look at your goals as being impossible feats, because that's what you're going to tell yourself. And then you are going to create obstacles that prevent you from being able to accomplish those goals. You are going to be your worst enemy. All my social media is Rakim Sabri. William says, make the money, don't let the money make you. Thanks for keeping it real. Yes, I try to always be transparent and honest in the way that I approach all of these conversations, because a lot of people be out here fronting. So you were never mad as a child going on the field trip. You just enjoyed the ride. I like that. I like that analogy. I like it a lot. Thank you. All right. So I don't see any more comments or questions in here. I really appreciate you guys sharing your space and your time with me. I hope that I gave you a ton of value. I apologize for whatever electrical disturbance occurred, but we kept it rolling. And yeah, I'm active on my all social media. Twitter is probably where I spend the most time these days, but Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, all out Rakim Sabri. TikTok, Rakim Sabri. I have a weekly newsletter on Substack where I write. It's called Overcoming Financial Trauma. So I write about different ideas related to this topic. And that is rakimsabri.substack.com. And I have a podcast called Overcoming Financial Trauma. It's available wherever you listen to podcasts. I just started season 2. I released episode 1 of season 2 last week. And so I'll be releasing a new episode this week. And I have all of the episodes in this season already recorded. So it'll probably be a weekly thing if you guys want to check out that content. But feel free to reach out. I'm very approachable, as I hope you guys gathered. And you'll see more of this content on my timelines, particularly on Twitter, because like I said, that's where I engage the most. But Brennan, I really appreciate you bringing me on and allowing me to have this time.
Yeah, man, I appreciate it as well. If you send me your links to like all this stuff, like I get your Twitter and Instagram, but like podcasts and all that stuff, we save these videos in our academy. So for obviously the current students, but also future students, they'll be able to come across this. I'll add that all in there and connect you there.
Sure, definitely will do.
Appreciate it, bro.
Yes, I appreciate all you guys. Have a good night and keep going. Enjoy the journey.
Appreciate it, guys. All right, we will talk on Monday. What day is it? It is Monday? Thursday. If anybody needs me in the meantime, reach out to me. You guys know where to find me. And like Rakim just said, keep rolling, keep doing your thing. And if you guys have any roadblocks, you know where to find me, or Heather, obviously, as well. So, all right, guys, have a good week. Talk to you soon.